What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I am Dave Broom, a local realtor in the Charleston, South Carolina area. Today we're diving into a very important topic, which I get asked about all the time. What is the cost of living in Charleston, and specifically about the taxes in Charleston? And we're going to talk about how that affects your wallet. Whether you're considering a move here or just curious about what it takes to live in this beautiful city, this video is for you. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, let's break it all down, and come with me. All right, we are starting with an overview of property taxes in South Carolina. This is a very underrated reason why it's great to live in South Carolina, because South Carolina actually has one of the lowest property tax rates in the United States, which is a significant advantage for homeowners. The state ranks, I think it was 5th lowest for property taxes in the US, which can be an attractive feature for people considering relocating or even investing in South Carolina. However, understanding how property taxes are calculated is very crucial, as the process can be a bit complex due to different assessment ratios, millage rates, and potential exemptions. So how property taxes are calculated in South Carolina. It's based on two factors. The assessed value of the property is number one, and the millage rate is number two. So the assessed value of the property, the first step in calculating property taxes is determining the assessed value of the property. In South Carolina, properties are assessed at a percentage of their fair market value. This percentage is known as the assessment ratio. The assessment ratio depends on the type of property. If it is your primary residence, owner occupied, it's assessed at 4% of the market value. If it's a secondary residence, non-owner occupied, or a rental property, it's assessed at 6% of the market value. So that's a big difference there. It doesn't seem like 2% would be a big difference, but it is a big time difference. And you got to make sure that you register with your state that it's a primary residence when you are living there, or else they will tax you the secondary. And then it's a process to get a refund in that. So that's something we could talk about, though. Commercial and industrial properties are assessed at 6% of the market value as well. Agriculture property assessed at 4% for private individuals and 6% for corporations. For example, if you own a primary residence valued at $300,000, the assessed value would be 4% of $300,000, which equals $12,000. That's not how much tax you pay, but that's the assessed value. And then it goes down to millage rate, which is next. So millage rate. The millage rate is the amount of tax payable per dollar of the assessed value of a property. It is expressed in mills, where 1 mill equals 1/10 of 1 cent, or $1 for every, or $1 of tax for every $1,000 of assessed value. Millage rates are determined by local governments and can vary significantly depending on the area. The total millage rate is the sum of these local rates. For instance, if the total millage rate in the area is 200 mills, you would pay $200 in property taxes for every 1,000 of assessed value. So it can get a little confusing, but there is calculators you can use online as well. I will actually put one in the description here so you can see what different areas tax. But property tax calculation example. Let's say you own a primary residence with a market value of $300,000. Here's how you would calculate the property tax. Determine the assessed value. With the assessment ratio of 4%, since it's a primary residence, you would do 300,000 times 0.04 and you get 12,000. Then you would apply the millage rate. Let's assume that the millage rate in your area is 200 mills, or 0.200. The property tax, you take 12,000 times 0.200 and you get $2,400. So the annual property tax on this home would be $2,400. There's different millage rates in different areas, and that's how you calculate it. But $2,400, that might be more of a 400,000 plus. It depends on where it is, though. So there is tax relief programs and exemptions. South Carolina offers several tax relief programs and exemptions that can reduce your property tax burden. You got the homestead exemption, available to homeowners who are 65 years or older, totally and permanently disabled, or totally blind. The first 50,000 of their fair market value of the primary residence is exempt from property taxes. So this brings the rate down. And you pay less in property taxes. There's a legal residence exemption. Primary residents qualify for reduction in property taxes as they are assessed at a lower rate, 4% instead of 6%. So when you live, it's your primary residence, you're at 4% instead of 6%. And are exempt from certain school operating taxes. You got the agricultural use exemption. Land use for agricultural purposes can be assessed at a lower rate, 4% for individuals, 6% for corporations, rather than at the market value. And you also have military and veteran exemptions. Disabled veterans, former POWs, and surviving spouses may qualify for additional property tax exemptions, all things you should look into. South Carolina is a very pro-military state. They like to give you as many advantages as you can. Reassessment and appeals. South Carolina counties are required to reassess property values every 5 years. During reassessment, the county may adjust the fair market value of your property, which could increase or decrease your property tax bill. If you disagree with the assessed value, you have the right to appeal. And then the appeal process. The appeal process involves filing appeal. Typically, you must file an appeal within 90 days of receiving your reassessment notice. You have a hearing. Your appeal will be heard by a local board, where you can present evidence such as a recent appraisal to support your case, and then you have a decision. The board will make a determination on whether the assessed value should be adjusted. So that's a whole process. You can get your house assessed lower if you think it's worth lower than it was assessed at, the fair market value. Ours just happened now, but it's every 5 years. Property taxes in South Carolina are relatively low compared to many other states, making it an attractive place for homeowners. Understanding how property taxes are calculated based on assessed value of your property and the local millage rate is key to estimating your annual tax bill. Additionally, take advantage of any exemptions or relief programs you may qualify for to further reduce your tax burden. But coming from New York, one of the big things that attracted us to South Carolina was how much house you can afford because how few property taxes that you pay. In New York, you are taxed much higher than in South Carolina. So you can't afford as much house. For example, if you get a $400,000 house in South Carolina, you're getting taxed $3,000-ish if we go by the calculations, depend on the millage rate. If you get that same house up in even Buffalo, New York, you're talking double and even triple the taxes. So taxes are a big thing. That's why the cost of living is lower in South Carolina, because the property taxes are much lower. Also, if you're thinking about moving down here, I didn't even get into the spiel yet. First of all, if you like this video, feel free to like, subscribe. Also, you can hit the bell. If you subscribe, you'll get more videos like this informing you of the South Carolina area and homes in the area. And if you hit the notification bell, you will get notified when new videos are hitting the channel. I try to do at least 2 every week, and bring information. Knowledge is power. If you're in a state you don't like, you might like South Carolina. I try to give you as much knowledge as possible through these videos. Also, to be honest with you, my team and I are getting calls, texts, emails from people who don't like their state. They're looking into moving into a different state, especially the northern states, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania area, California, also Washington. I've been getting a lot of calls from. If that's you, you don't like the state you're living in, you want to reach out to a realtor who's going to be honest with you, inform you, not be pushy, feel free to reach out to me. You can give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email. I'm very responsive. I will get back to you. We can have a conversation, and I can explain what it was like moving down here with my wife and 4 kids from Buffalo, New York, the logistics of that, the process of that, how we've liked it over 2.5 years now, and we can just talk about that. You can tell me your story and I can help you out. So feel free to reach out. You can give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email. I'd love to have a conversation. But let's continue talking about cost of living in South Carolina. All right, next up is sales tax. I'm going to give you a little overview of sales tax in South Carolina. I get asked a lot. Sales tax in South Carolina is a significant source of revenue for the state, used to fund various public services such as education, transportation, and public safety. South Carolina has a base state sales tax rate, but local jurisdictions, counties and cities, can impose additional sales taxes, leading to variations in the total sales tax rate depending on where you make your purchase. So this is how they make up for some of the property taxes, because the property taxes are so low. The state sales tax rate, the base state sales tax rate in South Carolina is 6%. The rate applies to most retail sales of goods and certain services with a few exceptions, I should say. The state sales tax is uniform across all of South Carolina, meaning that the 6% rate is applicable statewide. Local option sales tax, though. In addition to the state sales tax, counties and municipalities in South Carolina can impose local option sales tax. These local taxes are typically added to the base state sales tax rate, resulting in a higher overall sales tax in those areas. Local option sales taxes are usually used to fund specific projects or services, such as school improvements, road maintenance, or public transportation. The additional local sales tax rates can range from 1% to 3% depending on the county. So just an example, Charleston County, the combined sales tax rate is typically 9%. You get 6% state rate and 3% local option taxes. So it can get up there in the Charleston County area. Richland County, which is Columbia, the combined sales tax rate is around 8%, 6% state and 2% local option taxes. And then you have Greenville, the combined tax rate is usually 6%. Then they don't do the local option tax rate. So Charleston County, you're going to pay more because they do the option. These combined rates are depending on local policies and voter approvals for specific projects. So they're not always like this, but this is how they usually are, though. What is subject to sales tax? Sales tax in South Carolina generally applies to tangible personal property. That includes most physical goods such as clothing, furniture, electronics, and vehicles. Some services are also subject to sales tax, such as accommodation services, so hotel stays, restaurant meals, that's prepared food, and communication services, telephone and cable TV. Digital goods, sales tax is also applied to digital goods such as music downloads, ebooks, and streaming services. Exemptions and special cases, though. South Carolina provides several exemptions and special cases where sales tax is not applied or is reduced. First is groceries. Most unprepared food items are exempt from state sales tax. However, local option taxes may still apply depending on the county. So this goes back to Charleston, what county where they put the 3%, they still might put the tax on groceries. Prescription medications, prescription drugs are exempt from sales tax in South Carolina. You have medical equipment, certain medical supplies and equipment such as prosthetic devices and diabetic supplies are exempt from sales tax. Agricultural products, livestock feed, seed, and other agricultural products are typically exempt from sales tax. Manufacturing and industrial equipment, so machinery and equipment used in manufacturing are often exempt from sales tax, providing they meet specific criteria. So it is the government, you do have to meet specific criteria, but manufacturing industrial equipment. And then motor vehicles. While motor vehicles are subject to sales tax, South Carolina caps the sales tax on motor vehicle purchases at a maximum of $500, often referred to as a maximum sales tax. This cap also applies to boats, aircraft, and motorcycles. So they can only tax you so much when you buy these motor vehicles. You have a use tax. South Carolina also has a use tax, which is essentially a companion to the sales tax. The use tax applies to goods purchased out of state for use within South Carolina. For example, if you buy an item from a retailer that doesn't collect South Carolina sales tax, you are responsible for paying use tax on that item when you bring it into South Carolina. The use tax is the same as the sales tax rate, 6% plus any applicable local taxes. So this is just a little overview of the taxes in that. So you have sales tax holidays. South Carolina offers an annual sales tax holiday, usually held during the first weekend of August. During this period, certain items are exempt from sales tax. You have clothing and footwear, school supplies, computers and related equipment, certain bed and bath items. The sales tax holiday is aimed at helping families prepare for the school year by reducing the cost of essential items. So there is they try to give you a break during school so you can get your kids ready for school and that. So that's just a little overview of the sales tax in South Carolina. All right, last thing we're going to talk about in this video is the personal property tax in South Carolina. I didn't know about this when we came down, and I wasn't told about it, and then we had to pay property tax on our vehicle, and I was surprised, so I want to bring this information to you. So in South Carolina, personal property tax is a tax levied on certain types of personal property owned by individuals and businesses. Unlike real property taxes, which are assessed on real estate such as land and buildings, personal property taxes apply to movable assets. These taxes are significant for residents, especially for those who own vehicles, boats, or run businesses. So the types of personal property subject to tax is you have motor vehicles, you have boats and watercraft, you have aircraft, you have business personal property, and you have manufactured homes. So these are the 5 areas right here. There's 5 different categories that you can get taxed for personal property taxes. So we're going to go down each one. First of all is motor vehicles. Motor vehicles, including cars, trucks, motorcycles, RVs, are subject to personal property tax in South Carolina. This is one of the most common forms of personal property tax that residents encounter. The assessment ratio, motor vehicles are assessed at 6% of their fair market value. Tax due date, personal property tax on motor vehicles is due annually, coinciding with the vehicle registration renewal. The tax must be paid before you can renew your vehicle's registration. You don't get the sticker to put on your license plate unless you pay the personal property taxes and re-register your vehicle. So you got to do this every year. For example, if your car is valued at $20,000, the assessed value would be $1,200. The personal property tax is then calculated based on the local millage rate again to this assessed value. So 6% of 20,000, then it's 1,200. Then you are it's the millage rate again, which you have to figure out within where you're living. We're in Berkeley County, but there's other counties with different millage rates. Boats, jet skis. So boats and watercraft is next. Boats, jet skis, and other watercraft are also subject to personal property tax. In South Carolina, the assessment ratio, boats and watercraft are typically assessed at 10.5% of their market value. Tax due date, like motor vehicles, the tax on boats is due annually. If you own a boat valued at $50,000, the assessed value would be $5,250. Personal property tax is then based on this assessed value. Then you have aircraft. Private and commercial aircraft are subject to personal property tax. Aircrafts are assessed at 4% of their market value if owned by an individual, or 10.5% if owned by a business or corporation. The tax on aircraft are typically due annually again, similar to vehicles and boats. Then it goes on to business personal property. Businesses in South Carolina must pay taxes on personal property used in their operations. This includes machinery, equipment, furniture, and fixtures. The assessment, there is an assessment ratio. Again, business personal property assessed at 10.5% of their depreciated value of the property. Businesses must file an annual business personal property return, PT 100, with the South Carolina Department of Revenue. The tax is then calculated based on the information provided in the return. All right, and then there's manufactured homes. Manufactured homes or mobile homes in South Carolina are also subject to personal property tax unless they are classified as real property. If the home is permanently affixed to land owned by the landowner, it becomes real property. The assessed ratio, manufactured homes are generally assessed at 4% of their fair market value if owner occupied, or 6% if they are rental properties. Tax due date, personal property taxes are manufactured homes the taxes are due annually. How personal property tax is calculated. The calculation of personal property tax involves 2 main components. Again, it's the assessed value, like we said, and then the millage rate. As mentioned, the assessed value is the percentage of their fair market value, which varies depending on the type of property. The millage rate, again, is the tax rate applied to the assessed value. Millage rates are set by local governments and can vary depending on where you live in South Carolina. Here's just an example. Let's say you own a car valued at $20,000 and live in a county that with a combined millage rate of 200 mils, or 0.200 again. The assessed value, you do 20,000 times 6%, which is 1,200, and then property tax due, you do 1,200 times 0.200, and you have to pay $240 for that vehicle for that year. Therefore, the annual personal property tax on that car would be $240. And it reassesses it every year. So if you were putting miles on the vehicle, the fair market value comes down because it's an older vehicle and there's more miles on it. Personal property taxes in South Carolina are typically paid to the county treasurer's office. The due date for these taxes varies depending on the type of property. Motor vehicles taxes are due annually in conjunction with the vehicle registration renewal. Boats and watercraft taxes are usually due on a similar annual basis. And then aircraft and business personal property taxes are due annually, and payment is required after the annual filing of the relevant returns. Failure to pay personal property taxes on time can result in penalties, interest, and in some cases, a lien on the property. So that just gives you an overview of the taxes in South Carolina. That has a big thing to do with the cost of living, because more taxes, the less money you have. But in South Carolina, they have the very low property taxes. They do have the sales tax and personal property taxes, but that does not quite add up to personal or the property taxes. In my case, not even close, because in other states like New York, you're getting taxed $10,000 or more on a lot of properties. And with this, and they also have sales tax in other states. So the advantage of South Carolina is the low property taxes, and you are able to live in a bigger house for less. So it's just easier sometimes. It's just easier to get a bigger house in South Carolina. But if you want to hear more about South Carolina, about property in South Carolina, about taxes, about cost of living in South Carolina, feel free to reach out. You can give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email. Days, nights, weekends, I will get back to you. We can have that preliminary conversation and see if South Carolina, especially Charleston and the surrounding areas, is a good fit for you. And keep it real, y'all.